Listen carefully. There are two versions of you living inside your mind right now. One is powerful, disciplined, fearless. The other, comfortable, lazy, full of excuses. And every single day you choose which one wins. Today, we're ending the weak version for good. Listen carefully. This is where everything begins and where most people refuse to be honest with themselves. The biggest enemy you will ever face is not outside of you. It is not your circumstances, not your past, not your family, and not your situation. It is the version of you that keeps convincing you to stay comfortable. The weak version of yourself is not a stranger. It is a habit, a mindset, a pattern of thinking that has been allowed to grow unchecked for too long. And the reason it still exists is because you have been negotiating with it instead of confronting it. The truth is, you already know when you are choosing weakness. You know when you delay what matters, when you scroll instead of working, when you avoid difficult tasks, when you say later, even though you feel that inner pressure telling you to act now. That voice inside that tells you to wait is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as comfort. And every time you obey it, you reinforce a version of yourself that is smaller than who you are capable of becoming. Most people live their entire lives trapped in this cycle without realizing it. They think they are stuck because of external barriers, but in reality, they are repeatedly choosing the easier path in moments that require courage. And those small choices accumulate. They shape identity. They build character. They define outcomes. You do not suddenly become strong one day. You become strong in the moments where you refuse to listen to weakness. Facing the truth means accepting full responsibility for where you are right now. It means understanding that your current life is not a mystery. It is a reflection of your repeated decisions. If you want something different, you must become someone different. And that transformation does not start with motivation or inspiration. It starts with honesty, brutal honesty. The kind that forces you to admit, I have been my own limitation. Once you see that clearly, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer hide behind excuses that feel comfortable but keep you stagnant. You begin to realize that every time you avoid effort, you are not protecting yourself. You are weakening yourself. And in that realization, something shifts. You start to recognize that change is not about waiting for the perfect moment. It is about deciding that the weak version of you no longer gets to make decisions for your life. Excuses are one of the most dangerous habits a person can develop because they don't look harmful at first. They feel reasonable. They sound logical. They even make you feel better in the moment. But in reality, every excuse you accept is a silent agreement with the weaker version of yourself. It is a way of delaying your potential while convincing yourself that you are still in control. The truth is, excuses don't protect you. They trap you. Think about how it usually starts. You set a goal, you feel motivated for a moment, and then suddenly resistance appears. You feel tired, distracted, unsure, or overwhelmed. That's the exact moment where the battle begins. The weak version of you immediately searches for a way out. It whispers things like, start tomorrow, you don't have enough energy, or you can do it later when things are better. And because those thoughts feel comfortable, you accept them without questioning them. But comfort is not progress. Comfort is delay disguised as peace. Every time you give in to an excuse, you are training your mind to avoid effort. You are building a pattern where discomfort becomes a signal to stop instead of continue. And over time, this pattern becomes your identity. You start to believe that you are not disciplined, not focused, not strong enough. But the truth is not that you lack ability. The truth is that you have been repeatedly choosing the easier reaction instead of the correct one. There is no single excuse that destroys success. It is the accumulation of small excuses that slowly erode your discipline. One skipped workout becomes a habit. One postponed task becomes a lifestyle. One avoided challenge becomes a personality. And before you realize it, you are living far below your potential while still believing you are trying. Breaking this cycle requires honesty in the moment of decision, not later, not after regret. In the exact second when the excuse appears, you have to recognize it for what it is, a test of discipline, a test of identity. a test of whether you are controlled by your comfort or guided by your ambition. Strong people are not those who never feel resistance. They are the ones who refuse to obey it. Excuses will always sound convincing, but growth never does. Growth demands action when you feel unready. It demands effort when you feel tired. It demands consistency when you feel distracted. And every time you choose action over excuse, you weaken the voice that once controlled you and strengthen the version of yourself that refuses to quit. Your mindset is the control center of your entire life, even when you don't realize it. Everything you do, everything you avoid, everything you delay, and everything you achieve is first born in your thoughts. That means the real battle is not in your environment. It is in your mind. And if you don't take control of it, it will be controlled by fear, doubt, and the weak version of yourself that always chooses the easiest interpretation of every situation. The weak mindset is subtle. It doesn't attack you directly. It slowly conditions you to lower your standards. It tells you that things are good enough. That effort can be reduced today. That consistency can be broken just this once. It takes your biggest goals and makes them feel heavy, unrealistic, and far away. And when your mind starts believing that narrative, your actions automatically follow it. You stop pushing. You stop challenging yourself. You start shrinking your expectations without even noticing it. But the truth is, your mind is not fixed. It is programmable. What you repeatedly think becomes what you repeatedly believe, and what you believe becomes how you behave. If you keep feeding your mind with doubt, you will live in hesitation. If you keep feeding it with fear, you will live in avoidance. If you keep feeding it with limitation, you will live a limited life. The weak version of you survives because it has been rehearsed in your thoughts for too long. Changing your mindset does not happen by accident. It happens through deliberate control of your internal dialogue. Every time you face resistance, there are two interpretations available. One says, "This is too hard, I should stop." The other says, "This is hard, which means I'm growing." One weakens you immediately. The other strengthens you over time. The difference is not in the situation. It is in how you choose to define it. Most people lose the mental battle before they even start because they trust their negative thoughts more than their potential. They assume whatever their mind says in a moment of stress is true. But your thoughts are not commands. They are suggestions. And you have the power to reject the ones that do not align with where you are trying to go. A strong mindset is built when you stop reacting emotionally to difficulty and start responding with intention. It is when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" It is when you stop identifying with weakness and start training your mind to think like someone who refuses to lose, no matter how uncomfortable the process becomes. Discipline is the point where everything becomes real. Not ideas, not motivation, not inspiration, real action. The weak version of you lives in emotions. It depends on how you feel in the moment. If energy is high, you work. If motivation drops, you stop. If things feel hard, you delay. That kind of living creates inconsistency, and inconsistency creates a life that never fully develops. Discipline is what separates intention from execution. The truth is, you will not always feel ready. You will not always feel confident. You will not always feel motivated to push forward. And if you wait for the perfect feeling, you will spend your life waiting. Discipline removes that dependency. It replaces emotional decision-making with commitment. It says, "I will do this regardless of how I feel." That is where power begins. Every strong person you admire is not operating on constant motivation. They have trained themselves to act even when resistance shows up. They understand that feelings are temporary, but consequences are permanent. So they choose structure over mood. They choose routine over randomness. They choose consistency over comfort. And in doing so, they slowly build a life that reflects control instead of chaos. The weak version of you avoids discipline because discipline demands discomfort. It asks you to wake up when you want to sleep, to focus when distractions are easier, to continue when quitting feels justified. But every time you override that resistance, you are building evidence that you are in control of yourself. and that evidence becomes identity. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who does. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about freedom. Because when you are disciplined, you are no longer controlled by impulses, emotions, or external pressure. You are guided by structure and intention. That structure gives you stability even when life becomes unpredictable. It keeps you moving when motivation disappears. It protects your goals from your weakest moments. Most people underestimate how powerful small disciplined actions are. Waking up on time, finishing what you start, showing up when it's boring, doing the work when no one is watching. These seem simple, but they reshape your entire identity over time. The weak version of you cannot survive in an environment where discipline is non-negotiable. And that is the real shift. Not waiting to feel strong, but becoming strong through repetition. Not hoping for consistency, but building it through daily commitment. Each time you choose discipline over emotion, you weaken hesitation and strengthen control. Over time, the version of you that once relied on excuses slowly disappears, replaced by someone who moves with purpose, regardless of circumstance. Pain is the part of life that most people misunderstand. They see it as a warning sign, something to escape, something to avoid at all costs. But in reality, pain is not the enemy of your growth. It is the evidence that growth is happening. The weak version of yourself runs from pain because pain exposes effort, struggle, and discomfort. But the truth is, anything meaningful in life requires you to walk through it, not around it. Every level of success has a price attached to it, and that price is discomfort. When you feel tired but still push forward, that is pain. When you fail and still try again, that is pain. When you choose discipline over laziness, that is pain. And in those moments, you are being shaped. You are being trained. You are being rebuilt into someone stronger than you were before. The weak version of you interprets pain as a stop sign. The stronger version understands it as a signal that you are moving in the right direction. Most people avoid pain so consistently that they accidentally build a life that never grows. They choose comfort so often that discomfort becomes unfamiliar. And when life eventually forces them into hard situations, they break easily because they were never trained to handle resistance. That is why avoiding pain feels easy in the moment but creates weakness in the long run. The reality is, pain is not equal. There is the pain of discipline and there is the pain of regret. One builds you, the other destroys you slowly. The pain of discipline is temporary. It shows up during the process, during the effort, during the struggle. But once you push through it, it transforms into strength, confidence, and growth. The pain of regret is different. It lingers, it stays. It reminds you of everything you didn't do, every chance you avoided, every moment you chose comfort over courage. Strong people don't avoid pain. They choose their pain wisely. They accept short-term discomfort because they understand the long-term reward. They know that every moment of struggle is an investment in a better version of themselves. And over time, they stop fearing pain altogether because they realize it is not breaking them. It is building them. The weak version of you wants an easy path, but there is no easy path that leads to strength. Everything that transforms you requires resistance. Every challenge you face is a test of who you are willing to become. And every time you stay present in pain instead of escaping it, you remove another layer of weakness and step closer to a version of yourself that cannot be easily defeated. The highest level of transformation begins when you stop negotiating with your future and start demanding more from your present self. The weak version of you survives because it is allowed to exist through hesitation, delay, and emotional decision making. But the moment you shift your identity toward your higher self, everything changes internally before anything changes externally. You stop asking what is easy and start asking what is aligned with who you are becoming. Becoming obsessed with your higher self is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is the constant return to a standard that does not bend based on mood or circumstance. Most people fail not because they lack ability, but because they never clearly define the version of themselves they are trying to become. Without that clarity, every distraction becomes acceptable. Every excuse feels valid, and every setback becomes a reason to stop. But when you are locked into a higher vision of yourself, your decisions begin to filter through that identity. There is a moment where discipline alone is not enough, where routine becomes mechanical if there is no deeper meaning attached to it. That is where identity takes over. You start operating as if the future version of you is already real, and every action is either bringing you closer or pulling you away. You begin to understand that small compromises are not small at all. They are signals of alignment or misalignment with your highest potential. The weak version of you is built on comfort zones, but your highest self lives in expansion. It requires you to think differently, act differently, and tolerate levels of discomfort that your past self would avoid. That is why growth feels heavy in the beginning. You are not just changing habits. You are replacing identity patterns that have been repeated for years. And that process will challenge every part of your resistance. Obsession, in this sense, is not chaos. It is focus. It is the refusal to dilute your energy on things that do not serve your elevation. It is waking up and immediately orienting your actions toward progress instead of distraction. It is choosing repetition over randomness, structure over impulse, purpose over temporary satisfaction, and over time that obsession begins to rewire how you see yourself. You no longer see effort as something you tried to do. You see it as something you are. You are someone who follows through. You are someone who does not abandon commitments. You are someone who moves with intention even when no one is watching. And slowly, the identity of the weak version starts to lose its grip as a different standard takes root internally